iPlato. My name's Daniel. I'll be joining you in a minute on camera a little bit later for my section. I'm one of the presenters today. To kick things off, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Eskel. So Eskel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. Good afternoon and thank you for joining our seasonal flu event. It's really good to have you on here. My name is Eskel Solomon. I am one of the customer success managers here at iPlato. I'm sure I would have had a few interactions with some of you, so you may recognize me. So I just wanted to remind you that at the end, one lucky winner would win an afternoon for tea for two at an Ivy restaurant of your choice. So please stick around and more details will be introduced at some point later on. So thank you for joining us. So I just want to take you through really interesting stats actually. So we did a survey consisting of 1,000 patients, and what we found was over 61% of patients are unsure of how to book a flu jab. So they plan on calling the practice for guidance. So that's really interesting. And over 76% of patients preferred SMS invitations as their form of communication regarding information around flu vaccinations. And 95% of patients who are eligible for annual flu vaccines will not book until they are directly communicated via text reminder. So that's an astounding figure actually. And 20% of patients are not aware that they are in an eligible group for vaccination. So there are some interesting stats for you. These were done over 1,000 patients that we've done a survey on. So I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Halima, who is going to introduce us to our guest speaker, who will give us more insight into our seasonal flu event. Halima.
Thank you, Eskel. Hello, everyone. My name is Halima, and I am one of the customer success managers here at iPlato. Now, to further explore the challenges and the solutions at a practice level, I would like to introduce you to our lovely guest speaker, Dr. Trivedi, who is a general practitioner at Shriji Medical Practice in Berkshire. We recorded a video with him actually a few days earlier, and he was happy to share this with you all today. Over to you, Doc.
So thank you very much indeed, Dr. Trivedi, for joining us today and sharing your expertise in managing seasonal flu jabs and vaccinations at your GP practice. We really do appreciate it. I guess the best thing to kick off with is our first question here. Would you say it's more important this year than ever for people to get their flu vaccinations?
Yes, I think it's absolutely important, and it's probably imperative that people get their flu jabs this year. I mean, year on year, we've always vaccinated the vulnerable population, but I think what the last 2 years has shown us, respiratory illnesses doesn't just affect elderly patients, and it can sit there and take down anyone from any age. So vaccinations are now open up for younger age groups and everything too for the flu vaccine, and I'll strongly encourage as many patients as possible to engage with it moving forward.
Fantastic. And what challenges have you faced in the past with inviting people for flu vaccinations?
So I think prior towards COVID, one of the big aspects was vulnerable patients, and that involved naturally popping into people's homes or bringing them in smaller batches compared to filling the waiting rooms. This past year's flu vaccine period was a much different experience because naturally you can't have hordes of people coming into the surgery. Things for us, we opened up everything in our car park. We had tents erected, queues staggered out, 2-meter gaps wrapping around the corner. And I think on the most part, our patients probably enjoyed that experience more than they did before, because it turned into a bit more of a social interaction in itself too, to, even while waiting in the queues, and you get to see familiar faces, and I think they enjoyed it a lot more. And so this year, I think from what we've learned is that whatever we end up doing, we want to at least make sure the patient experience is a much happier one this time around compared to the previous years, really.
So given that sort of scenario as well, a sort of extra question here, do you think it's important for patients to be able to decline an invitation and have that record onto their notes for declining a flu jab?
Of course. I mean, I think whilst we as clinicians encourage patients to have their vaccine, and us clinically, through scientific evidence, are able to explain the reasons why it's important to have a vaccine. I think it's very important that patients still maintain their autonomy in regards to that. And there's many reasons why patients may not want to have the vaccine, or may not feel that it's to be safe or it's not right for them. And as clinicians, obviously, we're as much as it may not seem that way, we're very impartial when it comes down to what decisions we make. And if a patient chooses not to, then I think that's important too. But equally so, it's important that us as clinicians document that into their notes, so that number one, we don't keep harassing them year on year if that's not what their intention is. But more than anything, God forbid, if something does happen, at least we know what medications or treatments we've given and what we've not. And sometimes that's equally as important. Really.
That's really interesting. Yeah. You mentioned you mentioned about how things have worked this year, and I joked about going through the COVID vaccination queue myself. Obviously, at the moment, we're going through a period where the booster is now on its way as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So with COVID vaccinations as well, this little booster jab that's going to be coming possibly at the same sort of time or close to it. What challenges do you think you'll face this year with possibly those two things happening?
So I think when you put the two things together, the big things that come to mind is, number one, funding and resources of having somebody, administering each of those. Now, periodically, whenever we've given our flu vaccines, we've tried to factor in our pneumococcal vaccines for our over 65s at the same time. Now, and at least time them in so that we're at least able to give them that vaccine at the time. On this occasion, though, when we're talking in COVID vaccines, obviously the boosters are primarily for the vulnerable patients more so. But when we're talking about administering 2 to 3 potential vaccines in such a short period of time, it is going to be very, very challenging from a resource perspective. And I don't think many areas are being funded extra for. This act is mainly clinics and surgeries going out of their way to protect their communities in the best way possible. Also, one of the contraindications of the COVID vaccines is that you can't have other vaccines very close to it, so they've got to be staggered apart. And that's probably also going to come down to a resource issue on how we execute that. But I think a lot of people at our local COVID centres and our directors in our PCN are doing a fantastic job in orchestrating the right way to execute that. So hopefully it should be equally as smooth as the vaccine program has been for the flu last year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really did demonstrate, didn't it, what can be achieved and what people, what the surgeries can do when they put that together. Yeah, and on that sort of subject as well, practices looking after their patients, going out of their way to make sure they're okay. There's this other side of it this year as well, with the misinformation of COVID vaccinations and vaccinations in general. Do you think that's going to have an impact on flu uptake this year?
I don't imagine it to have an impact on flu uptake, but I think that there's going to be a very big blurring of lines in regards to what vaccines patients are being given. I know that some patients are going to ask saying, is this for my COVID vaccine booster? Is this for my pneumococcal? Is this for my flu? And when you've got 3 different things which potentially might be happening for a potential group, it makes a big difference. There's obviously a lot of you call it propaganda, which is out there in regard, and misinformation about the vaccines which has come about, and naturally that's going to probably have a very big impact in itself too. And also for a lot of patients who had the COVID vaccines, they have had unfortunate side effects. They've had fevers, body aches, pains, and for a lot of people, having that twice, thanks to the first dose and the second dose, was bad enough. But when you then start presenting in a booster, I think there's naturally going to be an element of aversion for a lot of patients there. But it's important that we do that so that we can keep everyone safe and healthy.
Yeah, that was a really interesting point you made as well about the sheer amount of things that might have to happen and that people might be receiving multiple vaccinations and jabs, and how important clear information and speedily delivered information is going to be important.
That's right, yeah.
A sidetrack question then. The flu enhanced service specification now requires patients' ethnicity data as well to be collected. How were you looking to achieve this at your practice?
So our practice is actually a very ethnically dense population. Probably about 60–70% of our patients are first generation immigrants or the children of. And so we've been encouraged, I think, very early on to record that, even though for a lot of us, we know where that our patients have come from. I think when now more than ever, we know the importance of data collection. We know the importance of how data can be used to help populations. And it's with that that we were able to identify that BA-ME populations were at a higher risk due to the COVID virus itself. I think recording this information now, making sure that that information is up to date, is now more important than ever, because whilst we all may be humans, we all have the same rights. All of us are genetically designed a little bit differently, and thanks to medical intelligence and data analytics, we now can start using that information to make sure that we're providing even better healthcare than we have done before. So to any patient or anyone who is a bit apprehensive or a bit unsure about should we allow our practices to do that, remember, it's so that we can provide the best medical care for you as an individual, and it's not for any other weird little Facebook project or anyone else might be trying to chase after. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, excellent. But thinking of the challenges that we've discussed here and your experience with our MyGP Connect system so far, how you've seen it, how you want to use it, how are you planning on using the MyGP Connect system for flu season this year? What do you want to get out of it?
So I think our role of tying in MyGP is probably going to be where we're really hoping that we can sit there and start incorporating the app into patients' lives regularly, by being able to sit there and message patients in a bulk to highlight that they're being invited for that vaccine is going to be a savior in itself too. It's hopefully going to decrease our administrative burden for our staff drastically to be able to highlight, yes, you're being walked in and this is a walk-in clinic and this is what you can do on this day, and getting things scheduled. Even when it comes down to appointment scheduling for their vaccine, we're going to start trying to incorporate the app to be allow patients to actively book on themselves once they've been messaged. And fingers crossed that works out to be very fruitful when we do that. But more than ever, given the fact that we've got these multitude of different vaccines and different treatments that we're offering, especially tying in things like COVID booster, I think sharing information with patients about the risks and the benefits of each of the vaccines now with an app such as MyGP, the more patients we have onboarding with yourselves, the better it will end up being in terms of being able to message these patients, because we can send them reminders saying, you've not had your vaccine, remember these are the risks, this is the reason why we're doing something. And sometimes that little nudge is all a patient needs in order to say, actually, you know what, this is for my well-being, I need to get up off of whatever I'm doing, take a bit of time for myself and get the vaccine done.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's something that we've had real world success with previously with our cervical hub screenings, where that little nudge to get a text message to go for something like a cervical screening has saved lives as a result. So hopefully we can do the same thing again for you.
Thank you, Dr. Trivedi. That was very useful and helpful indeed. I will now hand over to my colleague Scott, who will highlight and explain the range of flu solutions available from us.
Hi everyone. Yes, thank you, Halima. I'm Scott. I'm the head of the customer success team here at MyGP. I'm very shortly going to hand over to Dan for the detailed demonstration of how you would use our software for your flu campaigns this year. But just as by way of introduction, I want to give you a kind of high-level overview of the types of solutions that we do offer to you already, and some that are available for maybe a wider scale health community. That interview with Dr. Trivedi, I think, really highlighted actually that there are still a number of unknowns around flu campaign vaccination delivery this year, particularly question marks remaining over synchronous vaccinations for COVID. And it seems to me that it is necessary for yourselves, the GP practices, to have a level of flexibility in your approach and to plan for maybe various ways of working. So I want to talk a little bit about how our software can help you in that respect. Whilst it's certainly true that a digital health solution cannot address all of the challenges that you face in general practice regarding flu vaccinations, we provide a sort of suite of options which we hope can be flexible enough to meet all of your challenges. I'm going to look at 3 sections today. The first one is MyGP Connect. That's the what you might formerly have known as the iPlato platform. It's our new name for your messaging system. Secondly, I'll look at the MyGP app, which many of you use very successfully with your patients, and there's things we can do with that app which directly affect seasonal flu. And thirdly, I'm going to look at the population health system that we offer. Let's go back to MyGP Connect. So many of you have previous experience of using the system for your flu campaigns, but many of you will be new to the system as well. So just to give you a top level overview, MyGP Connect you can use for sending your invites by text message to your patients. Now, it's not just a one-way solution. We do encourage practices to look at the two-way option of encouraging patients to reply when they don't wish to have a flu vaccination, because that information can be automatically coded into the clinical record. This obviously helps you in respect of your QOF points and having accurate records for your patients, but it also prevents you from needing to contact patients multiple times within a flu season if they really don't wish to have the vaccination. Now, the bulk messaging solution, campaign messaging solution as we call it, can work simultaneously with different cohorts of patients, and we can have multiple response options available. So you can be inviting in particular cohorts from different age ranges, and you can even customize that message to really hit home with particular population groups. Dan will look at that in some more detail shortly. Now, moving over to the MyGP app, as I mentioned, many patients use the app already. It is in fact the most widely used independent healthcare app in the UK, with over 2.5 million patients currently using the system to book appointments, order prescriptions, and view elements of their medical record via their phones. Now, the particular area where this relates to flu this year is a feature which some of you know about, but many of you don't. It's called Call Recall. And this is a facility where when you send your invites to your patients via text message, if the patient has the MyGP app installed, you can offer them exclusive hidden appointments from your clinical system. So if a patient is in, let's say, the over 65s group, you can make your appointments for flu vaccinations available just to those people, and everyone else using the app doesn't know that those appointments are there. It's a really powerful tool because that means those patients can book directly into those appointments. They don't need to phone the surgery, and actually that process, we know from customer feedback, improves the patient experience and makes the whole thing smoother for the patients when it comes to booking their appointments. So those are the tools that are available to you in general practice. And now, if you happen to have responsibilities outside of general practice, that, for example, you may be involved in the administration of a PCN group, or you may work for a CCG, or at the ICS level, and we already have solutions available for messaging at those wider population health levels. If we could look at the next slide, please, Dan. Our population health solution isn't just about messaging. We can send out messages to large groups of patients without practices having to send the message themselves. And we can also manage the two-way messaging solution through that as well. But we also have access to additional technology there. So we can incorporate into that message a chatbot facility. This has been developed by King's College and using from the health psychology department, using a series of structured dialogues which help dispel myths about vaccination, and really gets and is proven actually to encourage those hard to reach groups who are reluctant to come in for vaccinations. And then also we offer within this service a direct vaccination booking facility. Now, this is where you may be having appointments held at a vaccination centre, or where particular practices are offering to give vaccinations on behalf of the wider PCN or CCG group. And we can then offer a direct booking facility straight into that service. Now, if you are in one of those groups and you're interested in knowing more about this, please contact our hub team. They'd love to talk to you about it. It's hub@iplato.com. Okay, thank you for listening to my little bit there. I'm going to pass over to Dan, and we're going to look at the system in more detail.
Thank you very much, Scott. Yes, we're going to go through a little demonstration now about the things available within your MyGP Connect system that you can use already. So we're going to look at a couple of things: how to send a campaign message, so a bulk message, and also that call recall function that Scott mentioned a moment ago. To do that, we're going to need to go into our MyGP Connect system. So I'm going to load that page up. Here we go, our friendly login page. I'm going to log in here, and we'll see a very familiar screen, our home summary screen here. Now, this is our demo site. We can see that here. So it will look very similar to your own sites. If there are a few differences, don't worry. It's just that this is a demo site, so there are a few differences. That's all. Now, we're going to deal with bulk messaging, campaign messaging first of all. Now, when you send a campaign message, your first port of call will actually be your clinical system. You will need to run a search for the patients you want to message and export them into an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file. Either's fine, because the main thing we need is either the EMIS or Vision ID if you're EMIS or Vision users, or the patient's NHS number if they are a System 1 user. So in true Blue Peter fashion, here is one I created earlier. This spreadsheet here we can see has both. I'm going to use the patient IDs to start with. So I'm going to copy that column. There we go. Come back to my Connect system, and I'm going to go to my campaigns menu and go to groups, because I need to create my group first of all. Don't worry about the extra ones that you can see here for today. Your own system might have a few. It might have just one or two. That's fine. We're going straight to create group. And I'm going to give it a name. So you could name this the same as your search. I'm going to name it Flu Vac Invite 21. And it's patients I'm messaging, so I leave that as patients. I click Add Recipients, and I can add the patients I want to message, either by searching individually, or, as is most likely the case, with a large group. So I'm going to paste in what I've copied down here and move that to the right-hand side. And there are my patients. Now, when you run your search, you're bound to catch a few people who are perhaps registered without a mobile. So if that's the case, just click Excluded here, and the system will show you who those patients are who were in the list but didn't have a mobile number. You can copy-paste them somewhere safe so you can message them another way. Clicking Included returns your list, and I can click Save, and I've saved my list. So there's my group. It was created today, and I've got 8 members, 8 patients in that group. Now, a couple of top tips here. 8 is obviously quite a small number for a group there. That's just my example size. You could have up to 6,000 patients in one group and message them all in one go. Now, if you do that, just be aware, obviously, 6,000 all in one go, that might generate some calls, even if you're not asking for patients to call in. So you may want to break those up. If you do have a group that's a few thousand strong, you may want to consider doing 3 or 4 groups and sending them at different times. And I'm going to show you how you do that in a moment. Final top tip with this one, the date it was created or last changed, it's static. The group doesn't change until you make a change. So if you create a group but you can't use it for a few weeks for whatever reason, you may want to consider just simply editing or indeed just deleting the group so that you can start afresh with a most up-to-date patient list. I'm happy with my group here, so I'm going to go to campaigns because now I need to deal with my template. Now, again, I've got a few templates here arranged by subject. Even if you don't see as many as I have here, you will have a flu one loaded up by our support team, which you can edit and amend if you need to. Now, I'm going to create a brand new one straight away. So I'm going to go to Create Template. And we can file this away under an existing header if appropriate. I'm going to use a new subject today because I want every template I have to have a specific subject. Now, I'm going to use an example template that I have here today. This is available on your help page within your Connect system. So don't worry about trying to write this down now. It will be available for you. So I'm going to name this the same as my group. And I'm going to paste in my template. There we go. Now, this template here has the surgery name at the beginning. Now, we do that to grab patient attention. If the phone has a notification, then the first line of text is often displayed. If it's your surgery name, hopefully they're a bit more likely to actually click into that and respond. We then have a mail merge term here, which will populate the first name of the person receiving the message from the group that you've created. This can be particularly useful if you're trying to reach a hard to reach group like your 16 and 17-year-olds who are perhaps still registered under a parent or guardian's mobile number. If that text goes through, the relevant patient's name will be there, so that information can then be forwarded on to the relevant teenager in question to maybe get their flu jab, for example, or indeed their COVID one. Here, though, we also have an important piece of text back decline to refuse. This is some of the information we were going through with Dr. Trivedi a bit earlier. So right now, this is just a piece of text. We need to assign it a clinical code. But when we do, any patient that responds with that word, that code will then update their patient record automatically. So that informs you that they've declined the flu jab. And that way you can avoid having to chase them if it's no longer relevant to try and get them in. So I'm happy with my message here. So I'm going to click save. And that's put my message on here. Here we go. Look, in alphabetical order, we've got my template here. So I'm happy with my template. They will sit here for me to use forever and a day. I can always come back and either delete or indeed edit the message later if I need to. So what I need to do now is make sure my trigger word is active. In this case, the word decline. So we go to campaigns. And we go to trigger words. We've got a few examples on the screen here. I'm going to just go straight to add new to do our decline word. So our campaign name in this case is flu. The trigger word was decline. I'm putting it in capitals. Doesn't matter if the patient text upper or lowercase. It's just so it's clear for ourselves. And then I'm going to put in a clinical code. Now I'm just using an example one here. Please double check your own clinical systems for the codes you would like to use. If you are using SNOMED, then please let our support team know we are fully compatible with SNOMED and they will update your system for you. So I'm going to paste in my clinical code here. Now, when you paste in the code, if it doesn't pick it up straight away, just delete the last digit and it will then start looking for the code. You just find the one you need and it will populate the term below for you. I'm going to put an end date on this code and then I'm going to click save. The green dot lets me know the system is ready to send this code back when it receives this word. I've put an end date a little bit in advance. That's to make sure I catch all of my patient responses, not only the early birds who reply quickly within a couple of days, but those who maybe reply in a couple of weeks as well. You can put an end date as far in advance as you like. If you wanted to, you can click into the one you have, click on the end date and just keep clicking and basically just keep going until you're ready to stop. Now, top tip on the trigger words, because you are tying in a unique code to a unique trigger word, you would not be able to use the same code the same word on two campaigns that run at the same time, because the system won't know which code to send back. So we've got some lovely examples here of alternate words, including, for example, reject. You could use refuse, maybe. Any word can be a trigger word. So you would tie the code into the particular trigger word. Just be clear of things like yes and no that might turn up in a normal sentence. Okay, we've got our group, we've got our template, and we've created a trigger word. To send it out, we would go to campaigns on the left, and we would go to new message at the top. Now, again, we can send a one-off message. So again, we could look, but by a patient name at the top here. But we've got our groups in the bottom left here. So I'm going to find my group from today. There it is. Move them to the right and they're ready to send. We then click next and we pick our template. So again, we've done the hard work. We're going to look through our templates here. Here's my template. I select the text below, move it to the right, and it's ready to go. Step 3, sending options. This is where we can control when something goes. So if you've made multiple groups, for example, then you could choose to send one now. And then when you send your next group, you could choose to send it later and send it, say, 2 or 3 days after. You're going to get most of your responses from each campaign within 48 to 72 hours. So you can stagger accordingly. You can also control the time, and the timing here is 24-hour clock. So do make sure you've picked the relevant time. We can then add a clinical code to the message we're sending itself as well. So when this message goes out, we can code back to all our patients' records that we have sent them this invitation. Again, I'm using an example one here. I input it just the way we do with our trigger word one. Do double check your own clinical system for the codes you'd like to use. Read code comment, that's a free text one where you can add some extra text and that will go back with your code to your patient history there. I'm going to save that one. And then reply email. The system would like to keep you apprised of patient responses. It does that by having them in the messages inbox, and it will also fire off an email copy of a text that patient sends. Now, the patient does not see the email. This is all in the background. It will default to the user using the system. So if you want to change that when you send, click custom email list, pop in a email of your choice. That could be a generic one for the practice. Click the little plus button. And then once it's in the box below, click save. You need to do that for every campaign that you send because the system will never assume that the same email is to be used twice. Once done, we click confirm to send and we can see our message confirmation summary. So we can see our message. It's telling us 155 characters. The limit for a single text message is 160. So that's going as one message and therefore 1 credit to send. My training environment also shows me the credits before and after sending. Many of you might have a 0 figure on your system. Many of you may have a credit balance. It will depend on how you're funded by your CCG or how you purchase your credits. If you're not sure, please contact your customer success manager or our support team who can help you. It's picked up my delivery date. We've got our default clinical code to say a message is sent, and we have the custom code for what we've entered. So I'm going to send this now. The system will let me know it's sent. There it goes. And that's queued up ready to go in the messages out box. And once it's been sent, we'd find it in the sent box. Now, we're reaching the end of the session. I did promise call recall, so I do hope you can stay with me a moment. Apologies. Let's show you call recall because it's very, very similar. If we go to campaigns on the left, we have call recall here. If I go to add new, we can see how we put this together. The first thing we need to do is put in the patient details. Now, this is just the same as the groups we saw earlier. I will use the NHS numbers as though I were a System 1 practice this time round. So I mark the box as NHS numbers, paste them in, move them to the right, and I can export any excluded patients. I can then put in a message because the system is going to target your MyGP users. So anybody who already has the MyGP app, they can get a specific tailored message letting them know that they could use the app to book into that hidden slot type as my colleague Scott was mentioning. So I'm going to put in an example text here, in this case for a COVID vaccination. Now, the system will work out if the patient has the app or not. And if they don't, the system will send a normal text message. And that's this one on the right-hand side. So I'm going to paste in a text version, which lets the patient know they could download the app to book their appointment. Now, you don't have to worry about who is who. You just put the messages in. The system sorts it for you. To offer up the hidden slot type, we then need to select which one is going to be offered. What you will see here is a mirror of the slots available on your clinical system. So you select the one you want, maybe flu vaccination. I'm going to call this my COVID vaccination. That was the example template that I have here. This doesn't change anything on your clinical system. It just changes how the button appears for your patients in the app. You then decide when you would like this button to appear. So I'm going to have it appear after the bank holiday on Tuesday. And I'm going to let patients book for the following week. So the button will appear in the app at these times. Because the app button is going to appear on the 31st, I'm going to send the message on the same day. I'm going to send it a little bit later in the afternoon. I'm going to have it go in the afternoon. We can also add a clinical code, just like we did before, to say that we have sent our patients this invitation. And we have some free text as well at the bottom. Once we've done that, we can click confirm to send. We'll get the same confirmation summary as we saw earlier, and we can then send this campaign. Once done so, it will appear at the top here, and that is your campaign for you there. And that is bringing everything nicely to a close there. So thank you very much for attending. We're going to go through a couple of the Q&As as well. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Thor to very quickly cover that off, and then we will bring things to a close. So Thor, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our event today. I'd like to say, so we have run a little bit over. We're into the Q&A now, so I'll give a chance for a couple minutes to sort of let questions come in. But if you're not interested in hearing any answers to questions and you need to go someplace, please don't feel obliged to hang on. You can drop off from the event. Okay, brilliant. So let me cover a few questions. Now, one I received was they asked if they can have access to Dan's demo. So this event is recorded, so we'll be providing a link in a follow-up email to you in order of the recording of this event, so you'll be able to recap any of the steps. Also within the chat, I've put in a direct link to the flu campaign help section we have on our help site. So that recaps all the steps, has video tutorials, and then I've also put a link in for call recall. Okay, so I've had a question about SNOMED code. So I've seen they saw that we have the read code option within our clinical within Connect, but are SNOMED codes available as well? Yes, we're completely compatible with SNOMED. So if your clinical system uses SNOMED, please just send us an email and we'll transition it over, and it'll be a simple transition, but we're compatible with those. Okay. How do I know that I have enough credits to send out all of my flu invites in one go? So actually, Dan, can you bring it over to the summary screen? So whenever you need to check with how many credits you have on your system in order to send out messages, here, your default login page, once you log into Connect, you will see the summary page, and there at the very top, see the total amount of credits. That will let you know how many credits you have at your disposal. Send out messages. If you need more credits, then send an email to your customer success manager at customersuccess@iplato.com. I'll drop that in the chat for us as well, and you'll have it in the ending slides. Okay, I think that's a good place then to wrap it up. If you guys have any additional questions, by all means, we're going to send you a follow-up email, as I mentioned, with a link of the recording and some additional information. And then from that, you can, if you wanted to send a question off of that, send it over, and then we'll be able to answer you as well. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Thor. That does bring things very nicely to a close. Before we go, I know everyone is keen about the prize that will be drawn. This is going to be done after the event, and we will notify you afterwards, and we will let everybody know who the lucky person was in the follow-up email as well. So as my colleague Thor mentioned, if you do have any questions, do feel free to email. The email will be in the chat Q&A function, as Thor has said, and we're going to bring this event to a close. So from myself and the rest of the team, we really do appreciate your valuable time spending it with us. I hope you got what you needed from the session today. There will be a feedback questionnaire, which will be in the follow-up email. If you have a moment to just give us some feedback on that, that's always really appreciated. But we already appreciate everything that you've done so far in terms of attending today. Thank you very much for your time, and I will say cheerio for now. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.